Hello, it is another beautiful Monday morning, the 5th of June 2023. And the program is the Dailies on Echo Television International, where we will be keeping you updated with what is happening on the papers, especially regarding the strike that might hold on Wednesday. And we have seen that TUC actually telling the federal government to either, increase minimum wage and also to give a holiday on tax. So these and many other things are what we will be looking at on the papers. I am Sarah Elisha Dasham, and Rachel Tanza is just right by my side. Good morning,
Hi,
Rachel.
Sarah.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
Great. How's the weekend?
It was fine. The weekend was okay. How's
Quite
yours?
taxi, but then
It
we're
was.
here.
It was. But we
Yeah,
thank
of
God.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and it happens that today again is World Environment
Yeah.
Day, and I remember I think we celebrated World Earth Day in April,
Yes.
and today, for every 5th of June, annually the world celebrate World Environment Day, and today the theme is actually hash toward to beat plastic
Plastic,
pollution, and then we have ecosystem restoration, and we know it's very important. Rachel, you and I
Okay.
can actually relate to that. When you take a walk around, you see a lot of plastic disposables everywhere.
Everywhere.
And I think this is one of the things, looking at the environment, we have to look into it globally. And then for this year, they'll be hosting it in Cote d'Ivoire together with Netherlands, and then other countries will be coming together to see how we'll be able to restore back our the earth, back our environment. And then I think one of the ways they are looking at it is actually reuse of the plastic, recycling, reorganizing, and diversifying, also seeing how we can use plastic, because especially when you go to some of our drainage, some of the rivers, this plastic are actually causing lots of pollution in the environment, even to the aquatic, animals there. So a lot of things need to be done. And I'm really happy, and I hope that everybody will take this seriously. I'm also guilty of that, disposing some of our plastic in a way that is not expected. So I hope that from today henceforth we'll be very, very careful, cognizant of how we, dispose plastic. And I hope that we'll begin to have would I say, just the way we have some trash bins around where you could drop. We could also have another where you have a recycling bin where we can drop all of these plastic bottles to be recycled again. I think this is a great way we can actually, key into the theme for this year.
Yes, like one of the major, we don't have to even beat around the bush. I believe that one of the major ways to be able to reduce plastic waste is recycling. And whether we like it or not, plastic waste is a menace now to our environment, to the ecosystem, and all of that. When you see big whales being washed up offshore from the sea, you find out that they've consumed a lot of plastic that led to their death. And so plastic waste is dangerous for us, because not only we might not feel the impact directly, but when it comes to our sea animals, they are feeling the impact. And it's just a matter of time. When we begin to have decay in our water, it spreads gradually. Now, one of the major ways we've seen it affect us directly is that we see that our drainages are getting blocked, and this leads to flooding, because you will see in places that are not supposed to be waterlogged, there are drainages that have been created for water to channel and pass through. You will see that flooding is still taking place in places that is not supposed to, because there are a lot of plastic waste, because we know it doesn't what's the word, it doesn't degrade, it doesn't decay. Exactly. It is not like throwing a banana peel or an orange peel or a mango. Is not like it, because these things, they decay back into into the soil. But we know that plastic doesn't do that. So one of the number one way is recycling, and we can give thumbs up to some bottling companies that have gone through recycling. When you pick up some water bottles, you can know that this is a recycled plastic bottle, because they're softer than the ones that have not been recycled. So it's just easy. The more we keep recycling, we reduce this plastic waste from our environment. And we know that the companies that are into this, we can go for Pepsi, Coca-Cola, all these are carbonated drinks company. They are not fully into using recycle, maybe because of the nature of what they produce and the kind of container that fits it. However, they should find a way around it, that we will have more of these recycled containers for everything we use to be able to stop that. And then we should also find different kinds of organic ways of consuming things. Maybe we can reduce the usage of plastic and find means in using paper bags and other kinds of bags that are plant-based precisely, rather than plastic and all of that, so that they will be able to be renewed and used in different forms. And I believe that that's one way that in Nigeria we should be able to adopt that alongside other countries in the world.
Of course, I think this paper bag would be the first step forward. So when you go to the market to buy all of your perishable goods, you could have it in the paper bag because it goes back and then. So I just hope we take that. Well, let's quickly run through the papers, and we will be starting with the first paper, which is the Blueprint newspaper.
On the Blueprint newspaper, dead rumor, my husband alive, hale and hearty, coming from Betty Ekeredulo. You can find the details on page 9. Governor Yusuf Damalushi's Daula Hotel Hajj Khan building. This is happening in Kano, and you can find the details on page 22. And the big story on Blueprint, as subsidy crisis deepens, federal government woos TUC after deadlock with organized labor. Union seeks reversals of pump price, new minimum wage parties meet Tuesday. Serap threatens legal action over missing $2.1 billion 3.1 trillion naira payments. You can find the details on page 6. FCTA to develop bicycle lanes in Abuja metropolis. Nakon Air leaves 24,324 pilgrims to Saudi Arabia. Zenith Bank's Onyegu emerges Africa's best CEO. You can find the details on page 26. At the downside of the paper, 10th National Assembly in Dume wrong on Yari, Apabio losing majority senators elect. The writer flowing the story, Tinubu to meet opposition reps elect Thursday. Akume's appointment paves way for Akpabio and Abbas. You can find the details on page 6, and that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
On the Leadership newspaper, Zenith Bank MD named the best banking CEO. You can find detail of that story on page 23 of the Leadership newspaper. 82 fleeing a swap terrorists drowned in Borno. You can find detail in the paper as well. And on the fuel subsidy, federal government Labour meet form tripartite committee. You can find all of that story as well on page 7. And on the 10th National Assembly, PDP, Labour Party lawmakers under pressure to vote Yari and Bitera. And with the writer saying senators deserting Akpabio, Yari bosses. It's not true. We have the number to deliver him coming from Indume. You can find that story on the front page and continue reading on page 4. And we are having the Leadership here saying that our stand, subsidy should go, but its impact must be managed swiftly. This is coming from the Leadership. So you can do well to grab the paper and see what is the stand of the Leadership on the issue of the fuel subsidy. And that's all on the Leadership newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, bandits kill 30 in Sokoto communities. Trapped funds, Nigeria tops most in-debt countries globally. We have owes foreign airlines we have, like, take that writer again. It says owns foreign airlines $812.2 million. You can find the details on page 6. Adeleke dissolves 7th Assembly to inaugurate 8th Assembly tomorrow. The details can be found on page 22. Still on Nigerian Tribune, First Bank's impressive performance increases profit by 12.4% in 2022 financial year, 57% in the first quarter of 2023. Zenith Bank GMD named Bank CEO of the Year in 2023 Africa International Banker Award. Unity Bank grows gross earnings to 57 billion naira in 2022. You can find the details on page 6. And the big story on Nigerian Tribune, subsidy removal. TUC makes demands federal government may set up committee to review minimum wage. The writer following the story says NLC absent, TUC federal government to meet again tomorrow. Oyo, Ogun, Ondo, Oshun denied backing out of planned strike. Announced to take position tomorrow. Break NNPCL's monopoly on importation, Ibman tells Tinubu. Market forces now to determine petrol pump price coming from NMDPRA. Tinubu opposition lawmakers meeting postponed. We have not been consulted coming from PDP. Wire sacked auxiliary as PMS boss coming from Makinde. Government constitutes new PMS ESCO reopens parks. Indigenous should be next Speaker of Lagos Assembly coming from General Orawaju. You can find the details on page 30, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Daily Sun newspaper on the National Assembly leadership, Ohaneze Indibo tasked Southeast lawmakers to vote with discretion. Group mobilized support for Kalu. You can find on page 26 and 27. Still on the 10th Senate, Southeast deserve the Senate presidency. This is an editorial on the front page. So you can start reading it on the front page and also continue on page 11. Why the Senate seat should go to the Southeast. And on fuel subsidy, NLC boycott talk with federal government insists on Wednesday strike. Their absence surprising, but differences will be resolved soon coming from Alake. TUC demand increase in minimum wage, tax holiday, among others. Talk to continue on Tuesday, federal government to raise tripartite committee. You can find on page 6 and 29. Still on fuel subsidy, Apeman hails federal government over approval for private importers, says the price will crash. With the rider probe missing $2.1 billion, 3.1 trillion naira of fuel subsidy payment or face the legal action, Sarah tells Tinubu. Sit at home, Bishop Ona Chukuma, Enugu Town Union back Governor Mba. You can find on page 29. United Nigerian Airline unfolds plan to enlarge fleet. Prepares for operation outside Nigeria. You can find on page 25. NDLEA destroyed 3 tons of stock in Edo forest. Seizes 76.9 kg loud from Canada. You can find more of that story as well on page 4. Zenith Bank MD wins Africa's best CEO. Anxiety in military over expected appointment of new serving chiefs with the rider 300 generals Admir AVM Riggs retirement. You can find detail of that story as well on page 6. Gunmen abduct Catholic priest in Anambra. You can find also on page 4. The picture story here we can see is the president of the Trade Union Congress, Festus, flogged by members addressing newsmen after meeting with the federal government delegation on fuel subsidy removal in Abuja yesterday. So we keep our fingers crossed. A lot of things happening, Richard, especially with this blink of we're having nationwide strike coming on Wednesday. And so this strike, the hope of Nigeria right now lies on what will happen in the meeting tomorrow with the federal government. And of course, we can see that even the electricity union arm of the government are also threatening to join the strike. What that means is that there's going to be total darkness if they go on strike. And of course, if care is not taken, schools will also join in, because when we're talking about public parastatals, every other union or every other body that is under the government will go on strike. You remember during the cash crunch that we had when NLC threatened a strike with the CBN closing them, that was when we saw immediately the old currency was becoming. And we asked the same question, why do we always have to have a threat of a strike before we begin to see things falling in place? But right now it's bigger than what the government have actually envisioned, and we just hope that the right thing will be done, because of course this pain is really getting deep and deep. Every day when you go to the market, you can't even tell how much you are going to spend in the market any longer. Back was then you could actually budget and say, okay, 5,000 I should be able to buy this and this and this for like the first 1 week. But right now, reverse is the case. When you are hoping to get maybe a little of, especially perishable goods that you need to use, right now everything is very, very expensive. Transport fare, very little or very few people can afford. Right now, a lot of people are advising maybe you need to go back, dust your canvas wherever you kept it, your sneakers, and let's get into trekking. But then, in as much as it sounds funny, but this is the reality Nigerians are facing presently. And a lot of people have come out to say that the federal government should not come out and bribe Nigeria saying palliative. For how long will this palliative? And not everybody, that money is not, it's not going round.
Yeah.
So a lot of things are actually happening because we have to let the government know that yes, this is the right thing you're doing, but what have you actually kept? How prepared are you for all of this thing? We have seen that a lot of people are feeling that NNPC is beginning to feel like they are the only people that can produce this fuel. A lot of marketers have hauled this fuel even before the new product was made available. They are still selling it at the new price. So you can't even vow to get 2 liters on 1,000 naira any longer. So a lot of things are happening. But we hope that the government know the right step to do, and we hope that the meeting tomorrow will not end in deadlock again, but that we'll be able to provide solution and see what is the next step forward. What can they do right now? Because believe you me, Richard, even the minimum wage that TUC are saying it should be increased and a reversal. You and I were here discussing about even when you increase the minimum wage, how about inflation? Do you have control over that?
You have control, you don't.
So a lot of things are actually happening. I hope that the government is looking at that direction as well, because a lot of things are at risk here. Yes, we know inflation is globally, but then there's something we can do to actually make the pain lesser for Nigerians in the long run.
So I believe the challenge we've been having in Nigeria is that I'm yet to see a government or an administration that have learned from past mistakes and are ready to make the right ready to make things right. And the challenge we've been having, Sele, is when it comes to implementation. It doesn't matter how good a policy is. Once it's implemented wrongly, it becomes a bad policy. It inflicts hardship that shouldn't even be there in the first place. So all I'm saying is that there can never be a perfect timing for subsidy removal. That's the truth. As long as we are not the ones producing all the oil we consume, there would never be a perfect timing to remove fuel subsidy in Nigeria. What can be perfect for sure is the implementation and how the government goes about it. And we saw in the previous paper where the leadership say they agree with fuel subsidy. However, let the government do something to reduce the hardship. Now, that's where the problem is, because the first thing the government was supposed to do, first of all, was to put in measures in place that would reduce the hardship before removing it. So we keep having the mistake of implementing things wrongly, and I'm yet to see an administration that have sat down and thought about implementation well before doing a thing. We had the same situation when it came to Naira redesign and the cash crunch that happened early this year. Do we need a new Naira redesign for the purposes that the CBN outlined? Yes, we needed it for corruption, to reduce kidnapping, for valuing our currency and all of that. Yes, we needed it for those purposes. However, was the implementation good? No, and it automatically made that monetary policy a flop. And we are having the same thing now. There can never be a perfect timing for subsidy removal. Is it a good thing that we have our subsidy taken out? We have two sides to the coin. Yes, it has its advantages, it has its disadvantages. However, there can never be a perfect timing because we are still not fully in control of our supply of oil and even the refining in the country yet. But what you should have done before taking that subsidy would have been what will matter to Nigerians. This is where we will be able to say truly we have an administration that have the people in mind and have put in things in place to make sure that we're not feeling the hardship. The truth is that even if you're earning 300,000 monthly in Nigeria, you will not be able, you would also feel the hardship.
You will.
Because this is over 100% increment in the fuel pump price. We're talking about 200%, because it went from 200 and something to over 500. So we're talking about 200 and above percent increase in our fuel pump price. So no matter how much you're earning, you will feel this hardship. Talk more of people who are earning 10,000 and they need to transport themselves to work. Talk more of people earning 30,000, 50,000, 100,000. But then, even if we talk about the palliative, Sele, I supposed to have received it before the subsidy comes in place,
so that you
so
can
that
actually use the palliative, to actually
exactly
transport yourself or whatever you need to
exactly,
do.
Sele. So I'm looking forward to an administration that will sit down and implement things rightly, because that has been the challenge with every governance we've had in the country. Implementation always flop everything that seems promising, and that's what the present administration didn't think before saying that subsidy removal has come to a stance in the country, because you have to think of what to do before. Yes, exactly.
You know, while we were talking, Rachel, my mind just quickly went back to the Dangote refinery that was just, inaugurated, just recently, and hopes were that this refinery will start working by the end of July, August of this year. This was what we're on the papers before. This is what they told us, that it will start working. And this will have been the right time, just when we are having this refinery working, and then the first subsidy is removed, you get Nigeria will actually felt better. I mean, talk about other refineries in ports and the likes of them. Imagine if a little above maybe 2 point something billion or trillion is being injected into those refineries just to revive it back again. You could see that we have more than one refinery helping us to refine our crude oil. So in a way, we have everything circulating within the country, and then the pain will not really be felt by Nigerians. But then I think, just like you said, it's the right thing we're doing, but the plan is actually not going as it's supposed to be. So we hope that the government, it's not too late to actually, go back, have a rethink, consult widely, not just with a few individuals, but let us see consultation being done widely, so that other people, imagine somebody living in the far back UB, they'll be buying this at almost 600 naira per liter. And we're talking about poverty that is even higher in those areas. So we hope the government know what they're doing, and then we hope to keep our fingers crossed. We'll keep our viewers updated with whatever happened in the meeting tomorrow. And that's all on the Daily Sun newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, Auto Gas tells as NNPC marketers bicker over 500 billion naira debt, prorated fuel cost. The writer says darkness looms as electricity workers may shut down national grid. You can find the details on page 6. NLC boycott meeting at FGTUC seek options out of Wednesday's strike. Nigeria's broadband penetration drops as telcos lose 2.5 million voice customers. Yoruba Ronu urges Tinubu to prevent labor union strike. 7 days into second term, Sanwo-Olu yet to make appointments. You can find the details on page 5. Why Tinubu has not appointed a spokesperson. At the downside of the paper, terrorists kill many in Zamfara communities, abduct 30 girls. And while we're still on the bring back our girls, the Chibok girls we're having now, 30 girls being abducted, more to the numbers that we are hoping to be back home. You can find the details on page 7, and that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, Senate queries Accountant General over 910 billion naira NDA loan. You can find detail of that on page 37. And on trap phone, foreign airlines plan meeting with the federal government. PDP wants Tinubu to make asset declaration public. This was something that was supposed to be done even before the inauguration. So keep your fingers crossed and read more of that on page 7. The big story with cheese on subsidy, NLC shun federal government meeting, electricity workers back strike. With the rider NLC fall negotiation team, Lagos, Nasarawa, more state chapters joined the strike. TUC demands salary increase, fuel importers seek equal access to the forex. You can find details inside the paper. The picture story here we can see is 8 of outgoing members of the National Assembly moving their personal belongings out of their office ahead of inauguration of the 10th National Assembly scheduled for June 13, 2023 at the National Assembly complex in Abuja on Sunday. You can see them packing their belongings out. You can read more of that story inside the paper. OPEC raises Nigeria's output as Saudi Arabia cuts production. 18 die in Kanu crash. FRSC bus warn against overloading. We can find more of that on page 4 and 5. And this is really a serious case. We see it everywhere, not just in Kanu. Overloading is becoming, becoming a very, troubling and worrying issue. We hope something will be done. And we are happy that the FRS are actually, warning against that. So we hope everybody will take that seriously. The last story on the paper, NDLEA seizes 390 kg illicit drugs in 4 states. You can find that story too on page 4 and 5. And that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On New Telegraph newspaper, Tier 1 banks asset rise by 5.55% to 58.25 trillion naira. Coming from the CBN, federal government recorded 513.05 billion naira fiscal deficit in February. You can find the details on page 26. Saraki Lamido Wike absent as PDP Governors Forum retreat in Bauchi. OPEC reduces Nigeria's crude supply quota to 1,380,000 barrels per day. You can find the details on page 26. 5G network very safe coming from the NLC, assuring Nigerians that they'll be fine. And we have a writer following that story that says terrorists killed 37 in Sokoto villages, Catholic priest kidnapped in Anambra. You can find the details inside the paper on page 25, 28, and 29. Burna Boy is first African artist to sell out 80,000 capacity London Stadium. For our entertainment lovers, you can find the details on page 4. And a big story on New Telegraph, nationwide blackout looms as NUEE backs NLC strike still on the first subsidy. Labour says all affiliate unions united absent at federal government TUC meet. Government to constitute tripartite panel on minimum wage says Labour's demands not impracticable to reconvene tomorrow. Sanwo-Olu Ndume beg NLC to shelve planned strike. Unions demand legitimate, coming from Ashemule. Probe missing $2.1 billion, 3.1 trillion naira subsidy payments of face legal action, Serap tells Tinubu. Trapped funds, IAT is 6 Tinubu's intervention over airlines, $812 million. You can find the details on page 3. It's Nigeria, Ethiopia, Algeria, Lebanon, others keep carriers $2.3 billion funds. Fayemi, don't succumb to political blackmailers, APC chieftain warns EFCC. Drama in Abuja as NATCOM officers impeach Mohammed installed at Debono. You can find the details on page 25. Still on New Telegraph newspaper, Kegama to Tinubu address insecurity, corruption, wages, and others. National Assembly leadership don't shortchange North Central with Akume's appointment, group tells president. Details can be found on page 2 and 26. Senate indicts AGF for failing to recover 910 billion naira short-term loans to NDAs. Orders Imo Suburb to refund 482 million naira. At the downside of the paper, we have a study, cotton buds leach toxic microplastic into food. You can find the details on page 27. For those of us that use plastic cotton buds to chop our vegetables, you should be mindful of that. And that's all the news on New Telegraph.
Well, let's take a break at this moment. A lot of stories on the paper that are actually very interesting and we'll love to keep, to hear from you. So we hope that you keep our phone buzzing when we come back from the break. Please do not go anywhere. We'll be right back. the program still is the Dailies on Echo Television, your winning station. We've been keeping you updated with what is happening on the paper with the strike that might be holding on Wednesday. TUC actually asking the federal government to go back on increase of the fuel price and also to increase minimum wage as well as others. And we're seeing that even electricity workers are, planning to join the strike. So that means that we will be having a shutdown of the national grid. So these and a lot of stories are what are on the papers this morning. We would love to hear what your thoughts are concerning the story. Our numbers are displayed on your screen. Do well to call us. And remember, please, to turn down the volume of your TV set. It is important that you turn it down because we love to hear you. And other viewers also will love to hear what you have to say about stories. I still have Rachel Tanzi with me in the studio. Thanks so much, Rachel.
Welcome, Sarah.
All right. Please, you can also drop your comment on Facebook and YouTube. We will take it too on the show. And let us take the next paper, which is the Matrix newspaper. And on the 10th Assembly, zoning deputy speaker to the southeast unacceptable, says Ohanize Indiebo. You can find more of that story on the front page and also on page 4. NNPC subsidy removal to reduce petrol consumption by 30%. This is coming from the MD. You can start reading it on the front page and continue on page 4. African Development Bank approves $20 million equity investment to boost infrastructure. And we are having on the Under 20 World Cup, Flying Eagles crash out after defeat to Korean Republic. You can find that on page 18 for our sport lovers. Foreign airline trap fund now hit $812 million. Nigeria holds the highest amount of foreign airlines block funds. You can find inside the paper. And the big story here say oil subsidy removal. Who blinks first? This is a question. With a rider that say darkness loom as electricity workers get set to join the strike. NLC shun meeting with federal government. TUC tables demand. Sanwo-Olu begs NLC to reconsider strike threat. You can find all of that story on page 2. Election tribunal to be shut down as judicial workers join NLC strike. You can find that on page 8 with the hopes that this whole tribunal will finish by August. With the strike, we hope that the strike doesn't hold. Whatever needs to be done should be done, please. And they're still on minimum wage. Federal government to consider TUC demand set up committee. You can find what that committee is all about on page 3. NNPC to end oil swap contract, embrace cash payment for petrol imports. You can find that on page 13 as well. Why I sack auxiliary as the PMS boss coming for market day. You can find more. And we can see the picture story showing the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and also the NLC President Joe Ajero. You can find all of the stories inside the paper, and that's all on the metrics.
On Nigerian News Direct, NNPCL terminates crude oil swap deals, adopts cash payment. 6 years on, Dangote still most admired brand in Africa. Ebenezer Nyego wins Best Banking CEO of the Year in Africa at International Banker Award 2023. And the big story on Nigerian News Direct, 500 naira per litre PMS. NLC Serap seek probe of 8 years fuel subsidy payment. As Ajero mobilized NLC members for nationwide strike, Yoruba Council calls for arrest of labor leaders. KPMG forecasts 30% inflation on 500 naira per litre PMS. Serap seeks legal action on alleged missing $2.1 billion crude oil, 3.1 trillion naira subsidy payment. Endure APC government is temporary, coming from Atiku. If you want to know why he made that statement and all the other details, you can find them on page 22. Still on Nigerian News Direct, we have NCC targets 50% broadband penetration by the end of year 2023, and that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
All right, let's take a look at the Nature News. Stakeholders to dialogue on plastic pollution at Nature News commemoration of World Environment Day. You can read that story on the front page and on page 8. And the big story also on World Environment Day, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Seaway, Nestle, top plastic waste contributors in Nigeria. You can find all of that on page 3. And of course, you see their plastics all over. So we hope that all of these companies will do something very important to be able to provide a way of recycling most of this plastic that comes from those companies. Still on Nature News, we have African Development Bank appoints Afori Manti as Acting Director of Agricultural Finance and Rural Development. Soludo moves to ban sand mining in Anambra, gives his reasons. You can find what those reasons are on page 11. And on subsidy removal, NLC help end on strike action, right? NUJ, ASU, and others to join the strike. This is really a very serious case. Just when we're trying to recover from the ASU strikes, they're trying to get the academic calendar back on track. And we've seen this with this strike coming up. We just hope, really, Rachel, I'm really rooting that something positive will come out from this meeting tomorrow, because if something positive doesn't come out, it's really, really going to tend to the nation. It's really going to do a lot of hazard, not just our educational sector, but every other part, sector that is really depending on the government, because it's a matter of time that private individuals might want to join in the strike. So we hope something will be done about that. And still on Nature News, we have UN appoints African Development Bank President as member of SUN. You can find that story on page 11. On Nature Care, healthy living habits, you need to find more of those habits on page 15. NNPC wins down crude oil swap contract. You can find that also on page 9. All right, we have a call. Hello, good morning, sir.
Calling from Boko in Benue State.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Abba from Boko.
My take is on this Lumi strike concerning the fuel subsidy. You see, this fuel subsidy of a thing is like a pit dug by the former President Buhari's government for Tinubu's government to fall into it. The Bible said that wisdom is going to profit. He didn't use wisdom in removing this subsidy. What he would have done was that he would allow the subsidy till by July. They proposed that the Dangote refinery will be producing fuel. Now he just came in and announced the removal of the subsidy. And look at what has happened. He has fallen into the pit that was dug. Imagine Buhari regime lasted for 8 years. He did not remove the subsidy. He proposed the removal of subsidy in June when he must have finished his own tenure, and allowed that like a live snake given unto Tinubu, and Tinubu was not using wisdom to handle it. Now this is where we are, that we don't know what to come up tomorrow or next. So I just pray that God will take charge of this country. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And that's all on Nature News, Rachel.
So like just a little bit of stats and number just to help Nigerians know. I know that the Dangote refinery feels like a hope concerning subsidy removal, but Nigerians also need to know that we saw in the paper NNPCL saying they can give Dangote 300,000 barrel of crude oil daily, in as much as the refinery has 650,000 capacity, for refined oil daily. However, we need to know that Nigerians' consumption daily, as a report from the NNPCL, is 38 million liters of oil every day. Now, Nigerians should also know that it will take a while for Dangote refinery to be able to meet up with that demand, and it's not anytime soon, because we're also looking at them meeting their OPEC quota of 1.3 million barrel per day of crude oil, because as an oil producing country, other countries are also depending on you for oil, not only Nigerians, and you are a part of OPEC and you have to meet up with that. And now we are talking about how much you would be able to give Dangote refinery, and how long will it take for Dangote to be able to give Nigerians 38 million liters of oil daily, as that is what we consume every day in Nigeria, based on statistics coming from NNPCL. So just as I said, right, it might be able to. That's why I said we can, there can never be a perfect timing for subsidy removal, because there are a lot of factors in play here that will affect fuel pump price. But then Dangote refinery will, and if I'm to give a percentage, help a little bit, it wouldn't be up to 50% as of the beginning, as the start, because we know the capacity of the refinery is not, we know the capacity of the refinery, and we need a period of time for that to gather. What will truly help in terms is if we have at least three more others refinery
Of course,
working
Rachel. That's
in
why
that
I raised the
capacity in the
concern. I said we
country.
have another
Yes,
refinery in PH that has
exactly.
been down.
Yeah.
We have other refineries. I can't remember the other states. So
Hmm.
just imagine we inject enough money into those
all
other
of that,
refineries. I
yeah.
mean, that will really help us.
Yes.
So, and that's why we hope the government.
We just
look
hope they
into
do the
that.
right thing, Sarah.
Of course, Rachel.
Yeah.
Let's go on, please, with the next paper.
Yes, on the Abuja Inquirer, anger as UTC complex pulled down FCTA defense demolition. And the big story: fuel subsidy removal, FCT residents recount ordeal, federal government labor meets again. We have Adeko case widow. I was offered 71 million naira by my husband, murderers. You can find the details of this story on page 3. We have picture story showing Dr. Valerie Oti in the middle during her graduation as a medical doctor of the University of Chicago in USA. At the downside, we have Dorothy, also in the middle, of computer science graduate from New York University. And that's all the news on the Abuja Inquirer.
You know, Rachel, I was smiling looking at all
Yeah.
these graduations, and I was just hoping that this was a graduation taking place in our Nigerian universities.
Yes, exactly.
With this strike that is coming up, or for those in final year, I just looking up to heaven and I saying when, because some of the schools are just about to start writing their final exams, second semester exams. Some are on the verge of writing project, and we know already also are angry with the fact that government, the court have ruled that they won't be paying them, no work, no pay.
Yeah.
So you know what that means at a time like this. So it's as if you're triggered, you're already adding more salt to an injury. So we're just hoping, truly, I'm really happy for all of the students that are graduating. But I was just hoping this was a picture coming from our Nigerian university.
Yeah.
But we hope something will be done positively about that. Let's take a look at the first newspaper. On subsidy removal, Ajero NLC plans strike politically motivated, coming from Afebo. You can read more of that story. Still on the subsidy removal, Shelf plans strike Sanwo Olu Sanidume Bex NLC. You can find all of that. And still on fuel subsidy removal, price will crash. Ipman assure Nigerians we hope for that soon. Support my father, Tinubu's daughter urges Nigerians. You can read more inside the paper. Still on subsidy, no going back on Wednesday strike. NLC insists. Vows to go ahead with action unless NNPC federal government do the needful. Short Sunday meeting with federal government as TUC demand increase in minimum wage. You can't justify planned strike, SDP presidential candidate slam NLC. Federal government reviewing demands to create committee for minimum wage review, Alake assures. You can find more inside the paper. Still in relation to the strike, blackout looms as electricity workers back NLC. Kogi APC Guba candidate picks praise school teacher as running mate. You can find out a primary school teacher as a running mate. You can find detail of that story inside the paper. Senate queries AGF over failure to recover 910 billion naira loan. EFCC lack constitutional power to probe Zamfara account, court rules. IBB pays tribute to the late media guru, says he is an uncommon Nigerian. IBB pays tribute to the late media Mugu, says he's an uncommon Nigerian. You can find more of that story inside the paper, and that's all on First News.
On Daily Independent, fuel subsidy removal, CSO's human rights group back Wednesday nationwide strike, set up joint tactical team to coordinate action. Block Funds Nigeria ranked highest with $812.2 million as IATA laments. The big story on Daily Independent: exchange rate unification will crash Nigeria's economy. Only enough foreign exchange supply will make unification likely, coming from an analyst. One export foreign reserve importing oil products addressed. You can find the details on page 29. Sarab asked Tinubu to probe missing $2.1 billion, 3.1 billion naira subsidy payment. You can find the details on page 7. Bandits kill 62 persons in Sokoto, Zamfara communities. Ending sit-at-home Bishop Ona Chukwuma Enugu Town Union's back Governor Umba. You can find the details on page 6. Senate indicts OAGF over 910 billion naira short-term loan to MDAs. Onyegu named Best Banking CEO of the Year in Africa. You can find the details on page 6. Still on Daily Independent: no going back on our planned strike for Wednesday, coming from NLC. Blackout looms as electricity workers join planned action. Federal government TUC meeting on fuel subsidy crisis deadlocked. Stakeholders meet again tomorrow as NLC shuns meeting. At the downside of the paper, how Nigeria's economy can stay afloat, coming from an analyst on the subsidy. You can find the details on page 13, and that's all the news on Daily Independent.
And on National Economy newspaper, Rivers 15 other new state governors battle 2.9 trillion naira debts. You can find a picture of those people involved on the front page of the National Economy. And we have on subsidy removal: introduce palliative to cushion effect, experts tell the federal government. Introduce palliative to cushion effect, expert tells the federal government. You can find on page 4. Fintech cannot close the gap in financial inclusion. You can find that also on page 10, and that's all on National Economy.
On the Business AM, 1 minute. On the Business AM, we have the big story: analysts feast on Tinubu's inaugural position in Outlook. We have a column that says the African Development Bank's growth guidebook for Tinubu. And on finance and investment, Tinubu's tax streamline versus illegal taxation. We have companies and business: NBPLC, ice, wines, and spirits play. And on transport business, we have OEM's part market at LMF. We have visionary voices fast tracking as Lassa Viva and Lassa fever vaccine. We know that that's been a struggle in Nigeria. And we have an executive knowledge series that says what all tech startups need to succeed. We have a comment, and at the top side of the paper, that says brands worldwide spend $673 billion on social media ads in 5 years. And that's all the news on Business AM.
All right, on the TBS, we have primary school closed 5th to 8th June for heat wave. This is the international business paper. And then we have a huge environmental cost for not so valuable project. You can see the picture showing the environment. An autonomy of power crisis. Today, the country is leaning under an unprecedented load shedding of around 2,500 megawatts, equivalent to what the country used to produce in total during the last 90s. You can find more of that story. That's in regard to electricity. And we have a picture that says cost of electricity generation and the purchase. You can do well to give a compare and comparison of how electricity is in Bangladesh and then electricity purchase here in Nigeria. And we have export earnings sees $1 billion jump in May. You can see that picture story as well. PM calls for austerity in using electricity. How BSRM turns steel waste into eco-friendly construction material. I hope Nigerian business will also, take a lead from there. Load shedding likely to improve in 2 weeks. You can find more of that story inside the paper, and that's all on the Business Standard newspaper.
On Punch Sport Extra, we have King of Belgium Yusuf beats Boniface to Jupiler title. Messi booed on PSG farewell. Napoli crown Serie A champions. Ndidi begs Fox's fans. You can find the details on page 6. Madrid eye Osimhen as Benzema's replacement. Ibrahimovic to leave AC Milan for free. Kane wants England stay. United optimistic about Mount's deal. We have the big story that says Chai. South Korea defenders and fly Eagles under 20 World Cup dream with with back-breaking extra time winner. So we have South Korea beating Nigeria 1-0. On the downside of the paper, NPFL Super 6, Obiama fit for lobby clash. Pep releases treble dream. You can find the details inside the paper, and that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
Right, that's how far we can go in the program. Thanks, Rachel, for doing this. Thanks to our caller, thanks to the viewers and our supporters on Equa Television International. Thank you for always tuning in to Equa Television. Until we come here again, stay tuned for other lineup of programs.